Welcome to StudioCloud. Before we begin talking about the project management section of StudioCloud, I want to give a disclaimer that oftentimes StudioCloud is often releasing updates. And if you see anything during this webinar that is different from what you see on your computer, please refer to the written documentation regarding how to do stuff. We are often releasing updates to improve and add new features to StudioCloud, so it's possible that stuff can be changed over time than what you see here. To begin with, we're going to start off with creating a new task. Now, a task is something that you accomplish, and this is a way to track that. We're going to create a task. We're going to do an example, and we're going to use that example to explain different components of the StudioCloud. The first example we're going to do is office cleaning. Now, that is something you may be able to mark off when you get it accomplished and say, I've done the office cleaning. But for this example, we're going to go through and we're going to be a little bit more detailed. Let's go ahead and say empty the trash, wash the windows, vacuum the floor, and dust. So we have 4 different things that we need to get done to do the office cleaning. And let's make this a priority 5. Then the deadline, we're going to give a week. And we have the option of attaching the task to a project. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. And in this instance, we're using the Employee Boost add-on of StudioCloud, which gives us the option of assigning this task to an employee. So let's go ahead and assign this task to George Park. And here we go. Now, as you look across here, you see the different options for tasks. Let me just step through each one of them. This right here is the group operations, which lets you do those operations here. Those are fairly, well, let me explain them. Select all selects all the tasks in the list. Deselect all deselects them all. Delete selected tasks, any tasks that you have selected. If you choose that, it will delete them, so that's a way to remove multiple tasks at once. And mark selected tasks completed. Now, it's important to note that there is a difference between delete a task and mark it completed. Delete it completely. If you delete a task, it completely removes that task and there's no record or history of it. If you mark the task completed, it still saves it in the background. It just marks it as completed, and so you can't see it. But you can reference it if you come up here to show completed task. You can view those completed tasks, which lets you see who accomplished what when. It may or may not be useful to you. It depends on your situation. So moving across here, we have the delete icon, a delete task icon. We have the edit task icon. We have the syncing icon. And if you have Cloud Boost or Employee Boost, this icon will stay around for a short time before it will sync to StudioCloud servers and be shared out between your other computers. I currently have the syncing process paused so that you can see the different syncing icons. The Mark Completed button, this will mark the task as completed. And then we have the task name. If you click on the task name, the actual description will pop up. Then we have the priorities here. We give it a priority 5. We have the deadline. We have the option to attach it to a project, and we have it assigned to George Park as the employee. Up here above, we also have the ability to filter by employees, and as you can see, it works pretty much how you expect. It filters the tasks, so you can see just those tasks assigned to those employees. Now we have a task here, one task that is office cleaning, and once again, these are the things we do inside of it. Let's suppose that you had a task that had a bunch of different stuff and you couldn't keep track of it. You wanted to perhaps assign those tasks to different people, or you want to accomplish them. You wanted to accomplish them or have different deadlines at different times. In that situation, you would want to have a task for each item you want to accomplish. Empty the trash. And this one, we have a deadline of January 30th, and we're going to assign this one to Jane Park and to leave everything as is. So right here we have empty the trash. Now our next one on here was wash the windows. And we're going to assign this one there. And let me see, we had vacuum the floor. And we're not going to assign this one to anybody at this time frame. And our last one was dust. So we have all these right here, which means we don't need the office cleaning one anymore because we've broken them down into different categories. So let's go ahead and delete the office cleaning one. Well, for this example, let's just mark it as complete, and then we can reference it later on. So we have these right here. Now, that's great. You have all your tasks in one window, but this could get very messy if you had lots and lots and lots of tasks. And so we have the option over here to stick all of these tasks into a task list or a project. I've created a project already called Clean Office Task List. We're going to go ahead and come in here and mark all of these as part of that project. And so all of a sudden, we can go over here, we can see, oh, here's the Clean Office Task List, and all those tasks are part of that project. Before we dive into moving on to the project section, we need to go into details on regards to editing tasks. Now, when you edit a task, you have the ability to edit everything that you've entered, and you can see it all here. You can mark the task completed. There's another thing you can do, which is attach cloud storage now to a task. Now, as you can see, those sync icons are vanishing. One of the things that has to happen before you use cloud storage is that the item has to be synced to StudioCloud Server. And it just finished doing that. Now, this right here is cloud storage. This is available for the Cloud Boost and Employee Boost users. You can upload files and attach them to tasks. So let's use an example of a photography business. You have a task to get an image touched up, and you have a touch-up specialist in another city. Well, what you can do is get the task here, go to cloud storage, attach that file to the task, and then you can either share it. You can see here there's a share column. You can share the link to that customer, to that file with that touch-up artist, or you can assign it to that touch-up artist, and if you have an Employee Boost, you can give a username and password to that touch-up artist and restrict them only to the project section, which would mean they would not be able to see any of these things nor access anything except for the projects. And then they would be able to access, and they would be able to update their tasks from their status of the tasks from here. So they could touch up the image. They could then attach the image to the task and send it right back to you using that process. So let's move on to projects. Now, projects are similar to tasks in that you can create a new project. There's a lot of different capabilities in that. You can link clients to a project. You can have things called task templates, and there's also a concept of pipelines. For right now, we're going to hold off for a little bit about talking about task templates and pipelines, but we're just going to talk about projects themselves, and we're specifically just going to talk about projects from this window. Now, we have a great example of a project here, and the Clean Office Task List, and we have the list of tasks in it. We have them assigned to. We have all the information into it in it right here. That's what a project is used for, is to track a bunch of different tasks you need to. We have this type of project from this window, where you can create the project down there using the new project button. That's something how it's best to think about it as a task list. So if you want to get stuff done and you don't want it really interconnected with anything else, you just go to new project, you create a project, and that's something that you can just get done. So think of it conceptually as a task list. On here, before we go away, we do have additional filtering options, and we're now going to go through the different types of projects, and then we'll move from there into the pipelines and the task templates. We've talked about the basic project so far and shown you the basic use of the tasks. We're going to move on and move into the client, event, and invoice projects. That's where a lot more power is available. So right here, the Clean Office Task List is a basic project. Moving over to the client section, there's an icon. It looks essentially, if you notice, it looks it's the same thing as the projects icon, and the tooltip says create project for client. We're going to go ahead and click on that, and we have the option of doing the name, description, similar to the other ones. You can assign this project to a client, and that way in their client history you can actually view each project that's associated with them. You have a priority similar to the other tasks and projects, and you also have a deadline. You have employee responsibilities, and then there's this thing down here, add tasks from a task templates group to project. We're going to talk about this, but before we do, I'm going to go through and show you the clients, event, and invoice projects. Then we're going to come back to this. So I created a client project. Now I come to the calendar. I clicked on the agenda view, and I'm going to create a project for this event. The event's called example event. Same exact functionality, including that add task from task template group option. Next, we're going to come to the invoices, and we're going to create a project. This time we're going to do it for John Doe. Same functionality, including that task templates option down there. Now we're going to go back to projects. If you see right now, there are 4 projects in there. The basic one is the clean office task list. The client project is right here. There's the event project. There's the invoice project. Now they're separated because typically, and once again, you don't need to use these separated, but the reason they're separated is that typically when you generate a project from a client, event, or an invoice, you're trying to accomplish different steps. And so for your convenience, we separated them as a conceptual separation, but once again, you can work with them all in one central location. Now let's edit the client project. There aren't any tasks in here. And with the event, similarly, there aren't any tasks. It's empty. You can add your own in there, but there aren't any to start with yet. However, with the invoice, it's a little bit different. The invoice has the products that were ordered added to the project already, because it's assumed that you're going to be doing order tracking when you create a project from an invoice. And so it pre-populated all of the projects for you, all the orders for you, and now you can, as you complete those orders or deliver them, you can mark them off. We've now talked about the client the client, event, and invoice projects, as well as the basic projects. That covers the conceptual idea of everything you do with projects and tasks. We're now going to go into 3 different things. We have task templates, project pipelines, and project alerts. Let's go with the project alerts. This right here has a little, if you set this up, it will pop up a window on your screen, just a pop-up window that'll pop up and then vanish when the deadline is approaching. So if you want to have a pop-up reminder, that's what the project management alerts is. That's optional. Now we have task templates and project pipelines. What we're going to do first is talk about task templates. Now there are a few different types of task templates. I already have some examples here, and we'll talk about those later, but there are project, which is the basic one I showed you, the clean office task list. That's what a basic project is. Calendar or event, a client project, or a product, service, or package, which is also an invoice. Now, what this does, it lets you set up pre-built tasks for somebody. So let's do a client-only task, and we're going to call this task template group a example client task template. And then inside of there, we're going to say send them a welcome package. And we're gonna say for the after this task is created, which is gonna happen when we click that button, we're gonna do it we're setting up the deadline. So one day after that task is created, we want George Park to send them a welcome package. Now we have that example client task template right there. Now let's go back here to the client section, and we're going to create a task right here. Now we're going to go all the way down here to the task templates right here, and we're going to select the example client task template, the one we just created, and click Save. So we have this one right here, and there's the task that we just had. So we essentially created a project, and by selecting that, we can have one or more, as many tasks as we want, automatically added to that client project. What this does is it lets you, if you need to repeat a lot of certain steps, make sure they get accomplished every single time, or when you decide that you want them to be accomplished, you set this up, and it pre-populates all those tasks, and then you can, let's say, let's go to the task list here, and it shows all of our tasks here that we have. And let's say you have an employee, George Park. He's just looking here. He's like, okay, I need to dust the office. That was a task I got, and I also need to send a new customer a welcome package. So let's go back to the client section real quick. Now we did this. There's also an option down here. Only create tasks from task template. Now let's go ahead and check that check mark. What this does, this doesn't create a project. It just creates the task. So if you want to not have a project and just have the tasks, this is how you do it for a client. So this would create a task, and only a task for this client, and not a project. So we showed how to do that with clients. With the events, it's the exact same thing. Now, let me show you this. You click on this, that example task template, it's not visible. It's not there. We can't see it. And the reason is, when we created this task template, we made it a client-only task template. So you can only see this task template when you're in the client view. Let's go ahead and change that to the calendar one. Well, let's just change it to an example task template. Now this task doesn't make sense with this situation, but it's just for an example here. Or actually it could be. I mean, you may want to send somebody a welcome package after they've signed up for an appointment. So let's click on the create project. Now this is going to example. I'm doing this because we already have an example event project in there. And we want to click the example task template one. And let's go ahead and go look at that in the event section. And sure enough, there's the task right there. I'm doing that. I'm going through these over and over again because it is a confusing concept, and it's important that you recognize the differences with the task templates, because when we get to pipelines, there's some nuances there that are very important. Now, as you can see, we already have some different task templates. So let's add one for the new client. Now there's two examples for a photography studio: send welcome letter, send contract for a wedding client, and all the examples I hear are doing welcoming letters. So right here we have a new client welcome letter, and let's add another, and that one was for a client, so we're going to do client only. Now notice how I type in here the exact same task template group name as that welcome letter. We're going to say send contract. In addition, with deadlines, if you set up these deadlines, however many days you want to set up for, you can use cloud alerts to automatically send stuff out for these deadlines. So let's suppose you want to, well, if you think about it, I won't give a specific example here, but you can do a lot of stuff if you combine these task templates with cloud alerts. So you can send out email reminders or text messages or postcards at a deadline before a task, and so you have a lot of options there. Now I just saved. Now look here, we have the task template new client right there. We've just created two. So when we generate a project for a client and we select the new client task template, it will include both of these tasks in that project. And that's how you do it. You just keep adding, more and more tasks that you want to generate. And you can have as many task template groups as you want, and as many task templates. There's also, for the invoice project, notice how it changed right there. So I'm going to, notice how it pops up that window there. Type of task template. Select a product, service, or package. Now, I'm going to go show you something before we do that. Let's go back to the invoice. We have our task right here. It automatically stuck the products in here. And for most people, that may be more than sufficient. We do have the option of going into even more detail. Now, you can come in here, create a new task template, and we're going to create it for the product, service, or package. And we're going to select a product, service, or package. So we click this button, and we're going to select the an 8x10 print. All right, that's the one we selected. And what's going to happen now? When we clicked the icon next to the project, it generated a project, and it stuck in there the 8x10 print as a task that we needed to do, which may be sufficient. However, it may be that instead of an 8x10 print, you want it to do something else. You want to add a task in there that says something like send image to print lab. And once again, this is examples of how a photography studio would use this. And you have a deadline. Average select interval. Let's go with 3 days after. And we're going to have George Park. He's going to be responsible when 3 days after an invoice has been generated, and he's going to be responsible I misspoke before. I said 3 days after an invoice has been generated. It'd be 3 days after a project was created from that invoice. George Park would be responsible to send an image to the print lab to be printed. And so now, whenever an 8x10 print is selected in the invoice, instead of showing that 8x10 print in the project task list, it'll show the send image to print lab. In fact, we should show 8x10 image to print lab. So that's an example of how to do that. So we've gone through the conceptual idea of how task templates work. Now we're going to move on to the next concept, which is pipelines. Now, keep in mind, task templates are something that you do, and you're going to be, let's just use this example right here. We have these tasks in here. The 8x10 print, the 11x20 landscape, family portrait. You might be working on those two things simultaneously. And so you're going to be marking things off like actually the best way to do it is, let's go to the clean office task list. These tasks in here are all tasks that you perhaps would do in all different orders. One day you may dust, you may wash the windows, you may empty the trash. The next day you may be vacuuming the floor before you wash the windows or something. You may be doing these in any type of order. And so the tasks are designed to be accomplished at any time, you're not forced to do one thing before the other, although that can happen occasionally. Pretty much you want to get them done before the deadline. It doesn't matter what order. The pipelines are a little bit different. Now, the pipelines are used to track the entire order or project, the status. So imagine somebody called up over the phone, a customer, and said, "Hi, what's the status of my order?" What you do is you go to the customer, you edit the customer and click on the history, and you see their project, and it would show you the pipeline step, and that would show you the status of the order. So let's go ahead and go click on typical order for a pipeline. And we just have 3 examples in here. And we're going to say we're currently processing the order. So the customer calls up, "I'm currently processing the order." And then, you'd say the order is currently being processed. And then you change the status to be waiting for the customer to pick up the order. And then when the customer comes in, customer picked up the order. select area, and then you'd say mark the project completed, and that way you have a history that the customer came and picked up the order. A lot of confusion occurs with this is that a lot of people want to use the pipelines as tasks. Now that's a little bit confusing, but let me explain what they want to do. They want to, instead of having all these tasks in here, they want to mark these all done. They want to, so you know we have these 4 tasks in here. They want to create a pipeline. Let me actually step through the whole process of how to create a pipeline. I'm going to use the example of what people like to do, and then I'm going to tell you the problem with it. Okay, we're going to go ahead and manage pipeline. We're going to create a new pipeline. We're going to call it Clean Office. Now, default pipeline means when the project is created, it automatically will have that pipeline. And in this example, we don't have a default pipeline set up. Okay, the first step we're going to take out the trash. Next step, dust. Next step, vacuum the floor and wash the windows. Oh, I think I forgot to add that last step in there. Wash the windows. Okay, now you can see there's other pipelines in here, and I see there's lots of different examples of this. Is like a wedding reception step for a pipeline. That's to track everything that needs to be done with that project. Now the Clean Office one, let's go ahead and look at that. Let's suppose so we have these different options now. People want to use the pipelines as a task list, and there's a reason why you shouldn't. So let's take, for example, that you're going to clean the office, and it doesn't matter what order you use the pipeline in. And so you create a pipeline called Clean Office, and you have those 4 steps in there for a pipeline. You first take out the trash, then you dust, then you vacuum the floor, wash the windows. And so you do that 1 week. The next week, you do it in a completely different order. You wash the windows, you vacuum the floor, you dust, you take out the trash. Then the next week, you take out the trash, you vacuum the floor, you wash the windows, and you didn't dust. And the reason you didn't dust is because you were using the pipeline and you didn't have a way to mark off what you'd accomplished. So the pipeline steps are only things that should happen one after another, and you can't jump around. And usually the pipeline should be used for tracking everything that's happening in the entire order. So it's saying that for this order for John Doe, the entire order, every single task in there is completed, and now it's waiting. Well, let's change it. It's waiting the customer to pick up the order. So task is stuff you should use that you might do in any type of order. The key word there is not in sequence or not one after another. And pipelines is used to essentially track the entire project and what you may be doing with that. So we've covered everything to do with the project management section. Just to recap real quick, not to recap, but to kind of explain better, client projects are used typically when you have stuff you want to do right after you create a brand new client. So a client calls you up on the phone, you create a project. Most likely it's a project that either has tasks that are pre-populated there using the task templates of stuff you want to do with that client. Send them a welcome package, give them a call 2 days after or 3 days later, perhaps send them a price list of your different products or stuff, whatever meets your business's needs. But that's typically what a project is used for with regards to client. It's things that you want to do to capture or to prepare that client to go to the point of sale. Event projects, typically the reason why you do event projects is either you create a project of things you need to take to the event so that you make sure that you're always prepared, or it's stuff that you need for that event or that session or that appointment. It's either stuff you need before, or sometimes you have things you have to do after Maybe you have to finalize or get some paperwork signed saying that everything was done correctly. I mean, there's lots of different examples, but the event projects are stuff you either need to take or prepare for the event or things you need to do after the event. The invoice project is best thought of as order tracking. It's things you need to do to get that order to that customer. And then you have the basic projects, which is best thought of as task lists or lists of tasks that need to be accomplished. And then going even more fine-grained, you have a list of tasks. Each task is stuff that you just need to track, and this is one central way you can do it. And as I mentioned previously, using Cloud Alerts, which is part of the Cloud Booster Employee List, you can have emails automatically sent out before the deadlines or text messages, and you can remind other people of tasks that need to get done before the deadline. That covers everything to do with project management, and hopefully you have a better understanding of how to use it. Have a great day.